Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. And good afternoon to you, Mr. Jones. Thank you for being here with us.
She's so smooth, isn't it? We've been like talking the roof off back there, right? But we're in good hands.
Starting again.
We're in
starting
good
again.
hands here,
Restarting it again. So here we are, Chicago Humanities Festival, Humanness.
Have they been quoting a lot Darwin in this festival? No, isn't that where this is all coming from? Right? Animal. I was piqued because of an article in the New York Review of Books about a new book of Darwin, and reminding us that years before Freud, he was already referring to human beings as animals. And he did insist on it being higher animals, but because he's a Victorian man. But the fact is, he draws parallels to emotion and drives of the great apes, and we're still part of that. But that's what I thought the organizers, with this idea of animal, they were
coming from Darwin.
Darwin. Pardon? I see. There's one program that he's saying, but please.
So language being one of those things perhaps that defines us particularly in some way in terms of our particular animalness, the human version of our animalness. Language being formed by the tongue and the teeth and the palate and forming into sound, meaning, and then the language coming from the body as a tongue in time and space. Can you talk about how you feel language sits in the body and in our humanity?
It's quite a question, isn't it? Right. And, well, you ain't no dumb beast. That's my mother and father. You ain't no dumb beast. Now, what does that mean? In other words, you're created in the image of God. So I always assume that since an early age, well, what did they mean? I'm not like the cows, and dumb means I can speak. So obviously, they're shoving me into this identity as a human being. That's where it starts. And my father, one day he was a very thoughtful man. Neither my mother or father were very educated, but I remember him saying, he said with true disdain, why we shouldn't, you can't go lay with any woman because that's what the animals do. He said, and now what you might think, well, what do people do? Well, then it was a good book, the Bible says, you know. So language was, in a way, picking up on what they were saying. You got to my mother's notion, because she was quite a religious woman, and the great gift she gave me was an image of a person who at this drop of a hat could, no matter where she was, she would go into a state and make, boom, direct contact with her God.
Wow.
And the way she prayed. Matter of fact, in her church in San Francisco, my mother from Georgia, my father from Georgia. I was born in Bunnell, Florida. We were migrant workers. My dad became a black Yankee. He moves us to the north because he wanted the same things for his kids that the white kids had. I tell you all of that because they ended up their life living in San Francisco, which was a whole trip into itself, as you can imagine. And my mother in her church, and she would say, child, you know, they don't know how to bring the word, you know? They always say, Sister Jones, get and bring the word. Because you know what? They got too much pride. They don't know how to get out of self. They don't know how to get out of self and address the master. I'll open my mouth in a minute. And she will. She traveled with me in Uncle Tom's Cabin. And every night there was a section called the prayer. We've just done Eliza on the Ice about Eliza. Have you looked at these things? I think you'd be interested. Yeah. And then before we go into the section called the Supper, Julius Hemphill, with his long-tongue sax sextet, they're making this, and here she comes with me, dressed in her Sunday best. And, you know, and she would stand on stage, and I stood on one side because I had asked her, I said, Mama, I want you to come and I want you to bless the proceedings. I was being a little calculating. Why do you laugh? Why? You know, you invite your mom to get on your stage, you know? But and I said, because there's two things. The thing I was saying to the art world was, this piece is going to be about questions that were left when Arnie Zane died. And Arnie Zane and Bill T. Jones were, as I said to a group of French journalists, and they loved it. I said, I am the surviving member of a celebrated homosexual interracial duet couple. Played really well with the French. And I said that Uncle Tom's Cabin was about, because I had lived and had flourished in the avant-garde, which, from my way of thinking, it was a white avant-garde, and since I was a young dancer. And I wanted to find, now that the white man was gone, what did it mean to have an authentic black voice?
So in the beginning was the word.
Step out on the word.
You were born in Florida.
Yes, now I'm trying to get to the point is that she was saying whenever you get up in front of a group of people to talk, in her mind, it was step out on the word. Now, what is the word for her? This is the word of God, Jesus Christ. But that has always been, I took my version of it and I retrofitted it. Because some of my truest impulse, and I have to be very careful about it, I say that I have the infrastructure of a black Baptist, black Southern Baptist, but I don't have the faith. Therefore, I've oftentimes had a kind of a zeal, and necessary to get it across, sometimes to sing and speak. Oftentimes contrary things, to try to reference a mental process that's the same, conflicting. So step out on the word, trust the word.
Is that kind of like a technique?
You trying to trap me, Luddy?
Maybe,
No,
maybe.
This is inspiration from God. No. It is a technique.
Yeah.
It is a technique, a way of being, a way of not going insane. You know, I'm so excited. You have to excuse me if I'm focused, because the curtain just opened and this wonderful, beautiful, intelligent person just walked on, and I'm trying to speak to you, but I'm speaking at you, you know. We have to, the sense that I have suffered, as many black intellectuals have, with this notion that, no, I don't care about their opinion of me. Not true. A thing that goes, at least from my generation, that went unexpressed, is that we had to always prove that we were intelligent. And that was unstable. I wonder if you still have that now.
Well, I was raised with that. My father always said, you'll have to be smarter than everyone.
And what are the signals of your intelligence? How do you handle the language?
Indeed.
You know, how do you handle the language? So that is how language and my performing came together, language and my public persona have come together. It has been something that, and because I was quite proud of my body, young, self-involved man, but as the body gets older, now that I'm no longer dancing, I said you only dance when I'm happy. Maybe I'll get happy today.
Oh, that's promises.
Well, we have to work as a group. The spirit's got to come in the room to make you want to dance, right? Yeah. And that's about the congregation as much as the priest on stage.
Indeed,
you know?
indeed.
But anyway, so that was it. Using language as the body changed, and you could not readily get up and seduce, cajole, you know. Then what else do you have? Your ideas. And if you can't dance your ideas in the studio with my dancers and in front of the media, and I'm often in front of the media, how do you make your case? Language.
With language. Is there a language also of the body?
There's so many, huh?
Indeed.
Yeah.
So were there particular languages of the body that you chose as a young black choreographer, dancer, originally from Florida, but then moved?
No, I was born in Florida, but because my mother and father were migrant workers,
Right.
they would, go through. My sisters and brothers went through 6 school systems a year. That's what
Wow.
migrant kids did. I was lucky as number 10 out of 12 to be K through 12 in the same community.
Oh, wow.
German, Italian, fruit-growing community in the Finger Lakes region. So already there was a problem. My dad wanted to be a black Yankee, as I said, but did they understand that they didn't know how to be black parents of black children with white parents? Because the world they came from. I mean, so did they go to PTA meetings? No. They cared about our marks very well, but very soon, by fourth grade, I was reading better than my mother, you know? And so, but then there was this kind of unspoken thing, and maybe it's still at work. When you go out in the world, you gotta talk proper. When you come here, don't put on airs, be real. Now, what's that about? And you're talking about body language, you're talking about language. So it could be enough to make one neurotic, yeah? Or let's say kindly conflicted, right?
Right.
And then you become a kind of a master at it, you know? Or unless you're gonna play the I am real all the time card, you know? And that means, what does it mean to be a real black person? First of all, a real black person is an angry person.
A real black person is an angry person.
That's what I think the young Bill T. Jones understood when he went off. Well, I grew up I was born in '52, Brown versus the Board of Education, the March on Washington, the riots, all those things. And then when I went up to the university a year after the black students took over the student union at Cornell, and my university was 50 miles down the road. They gave us a third world corridor. So there was a militant stance. Militance about anger, maybe irateness, I don't know. Something's not right with this shit.
Right.
And I know it. And if you are Mike Wallace on 60 Minutes talking to Malcolm X knows that you're trying to get me, aren't you, sucker? And that it pays. This is the generation, I'm hoping it's different, that err on the side, if you are an ambitious black person, err on the side of suspicion, because they want to get you. Now, we've watched the drama of Mr. Obama, and for those of us who are trying to be open-minded, we don't say that the pushback against him has had anything to do with his managerial style. What? If we say anything other, I don't know who the we is, you know. It sounds like we are defensive, and we're gonna play the race card, right?
Which is old school.
Which is old school, which is back to, yes, sucker, like this feeling. Or one of these. Yes, I have no problems. I can match you. I know your references, your cultural references, and we're more alike than different. So those personas that I'm crudely parroting right now I think that's how language comes into play. Never clear about irony. Irony is very important in modernism, you know what I mean? And as I say, the internal patterning of a black Baptist, black Southern Baptist, which is direct, sincere, not long on irony, you know. And I wasn't long on irony, but I had to find something that would substitute for irony. And I'm still looking for that thing in my work and in my life.
Is there something, your voice has, from my perspective, listening to you as a 18-year-old choreographer, just, you know, starting to think about making dance and listening to you talk about your dancers.
When you were 18?
When I was 18.
Oh, what was that?
Well, I was listening to you talk about your dancers in Uncle Tom's Cabin and identifying each one and their differences, their peculiarities. and the different perspectives that they brought, how each one of them was sort of a language. Their body was a part of your the
Arnie and I
language.
both were smart enough early on, and maybe this is our early work in the American Dance Asylum, which is like its name, a place where you could be free, find refuge, and a place you could be as crazy as you liked. This was the, we inherited that from the counterculture, disparate people living communally, but the only thing is we didn't make bread or baskets, we made art, dance. So, and everybody around the table could lead, everybody could speak. So it behooved Arnie and Bill, when they made a company, to try to emulate that desire on the part of the Dance Asylum to be inclusive and out of the box about who was around the table.
Right.
So that's where that came from, the delineating the dancers.
And it also definitely seemed like what you were saying, the way that you were talking about Blackness in the context of this sort of avant-garde dance that from our perspective in African-American Black dance communities, I was in Florida at the time, dancing at an HBCU. Your voice seemed...
HBCU stands for?
Historically Black College and University. Family.
I'm terrible at acronyms, and that one went completely over my head.
Florida A&M University, Tallahassee, Florida. And your voice seemed so strong and clear about Black identity in the context of avant-garde, in the context of an avant-garde dance form that we considered very white.
And it is, and was.
And there was irony there, but power in that irony, I think, for me to see you embodying a physical vernacular and vocabulary.
So what do you mean by that? When I'm dancing, that little dance I do in Uncle Tom's Cabin, and every once in a while I stop and breathe.
Yeah.
Yes?
No, I think it has a lot more to do with your tendu.
With my tendu?
Yeah, like the efficiency and the specificity of your tendu.
And that was Black?
No, I didn't consider that Black. I considered that white.
Yeah, you're right.
But I considered your voice Black.
Yes.
Your voice sounded like my father's voice. It sounded like my...
Which is so touching to me. Now, you have to realize that the Uncle Tom's Cabin, do you all know anybody who saw Uncle Tom's Cabin, right? Great. We had one of the best versions of it here in this town. But the Uncle Tom's Cabin was made when Arnie Zane, we were proposing it to Harvey Lichtenstein. We'd already been there twice at this point at the Brooklyn Academy of Music. And I remember coming in one day to Arnie's hospital room, and he and I always came up with these ideas together. And there was Harvey, who was sitting there and, yes, Bubba, he was patting Arnie's head, and Arnie, because Arnie's idea was the next piece, we got, what's the next piece at BAM gonna be? And he and I had been talking about the idea of, we always thought in titles. The Leonardo da Vinci, The Last Supper, because I think Arnie was one of those persons that saw that Last Supper of Uncle Tom's Cabin painted on velvet, Leonardo's Uncle Tom's Cabin painted on velvet over my mother's couch. And he thought he really loved that about that, Well, there was, any of you old enough to remember that famous one of Martin Luther King, Abraham Lincoln, John Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King, painted on velvet, right? Yes. And then there would be the Last Supper, Supper over there as well. I don't think my mother knew who Leonardo was, right? So he was talking Harvey into this idea we have, which is going to be about Liza on the Ice, and you probably have read this, Jessie Norman, who was at the height of her grandeur at that time, the great soprano, and Jessie Norman on the Brooklyn Academy of Music stage on an ice floe, moving from ice floe to ice floe as Eliza, right? Well, that's how he and I thought. And then Sean Curran, a really important choreographer now, brought in a deck of cards from a very hip downtown East Village shop called Little Ricky, softcore gay porno cards. Now, imagine the 70s with cowboys and Indians and that sort of thing, the milkman, a sexy milkman and so on, So, but he said, and it was called 52 Handsome Nudes. So, Last Supper, Uncle Tom's Cabin, with 52 handsome nudes. You know? Well, that's how the title came about. Now, so when you talk about how my direct black voice, he dies. That title is still there with all of its potential irony and what have you, you know? But, okay, now, Bill, you know that Arnie was the one who's strong on irony. You're not. Okay, so the Last Supper. There's Estella. Oh, one more time. Mama, did you ever know what did Jesus look like? Me pushing this woman whose father left when she was a child. I said, well, what color was he? You know, and well, he's just a regular man. Now, knowing the problem Estella had with white people, I said, well, what did his hair look like? Well, you know, it's kind of like in the old days. Well, what color was he? Oh, he was just a regular man, not a black man, not a white man. Okay, already that's an area of investigation. What did Leonardo and European Renaissance notions of the Old Testament, or sorry, the New Testament mean to Estella? And then the Last Supper at Uncle Tom's Cabin, that dangerous text that I had never read when I was young. I read it only as an adult because it made me too angry. It made me too humiliated. And I thought, okay, well, I will bring this to my community. How many of them really know what Uncle Tom meant to my generation of 60s people? And then the Promised Land, or 50 Handsome Nudes, scared everybody, because this is the era of Robert Mapplethorpe. This is the era of the culture wars. So everybody was concerned because it had to be toured widely. We wanted a lot of co-presenters. So let's change that title. Rather than the 52 Handsome Nudes, which it ended up being, let's make it the Promised Land. In other words, a place where all bodies are accepted, which was the counterculture ideal. Even though we've been through religion and race, we end up at the Promised Land where everybody is there. I'm saying I sound so clear about race. I was trying to get clear about identity and how we could be various identities and inhabit the same space, which is the theatrical space.
Do you think we've made progress?
Have I, you mean? Because I can't speak for you.
Okay, sure, you. Have you made progress?
My company remains multiracial, multi-ethnic. I prize it. Diversity is very important. It used to be diversity. Larry Goldhuber was 300 pounds. Sage and John Coles were millionaires from Minneapolis. John Coles was a chairman of Coles Enterprises, a major media chain, until he sold it. But they came on board. No, I have not backed off from that one, even though recently I said to Janet Wong, who is the first associate artistic director the company's had since Arnie Zane. One night I was watching my dancers on stage, and I think of Mr. Ailey. Alvin once said to me when I was making a piece for him, he said, "Don't hurt my boys." Because, you know, we were doing kind of contact, rough way that Arnie and I partnered. Just the way he said, "my boys." You know what I've said to you before? I would love to be loved by your generation of young black folks. Can I be your father? Will you give me the privilege of being even Uncle Bill, you know, who takes his clothes off in public, who is homosexual, who is HIV positive? I mean, will you be ashamed of me? Can you love me, right? Okay, it cuts both ways. Can we get into the world? So I'm losing myself now because I'm so excited, but
But I can say yes. I can say yes, and I can tell you how.
How?
I think that in seeing you make some of those choices that you made, in the bodies that you put on stage, in the stories that you put in their mouths and drew from their mouths, the diversity of those bodies, and that they offered and
Heidi
that you
Latsky
accepted.
wanted. She said, our Justice Allen was there, who my mother loved, like her son. Telling his story about being in prison, getting his leg broken, and so on. Heidi Latsky, I don't think you're interested in me anymore. What does this work have to say about a Jewish woman, a small Jewish woman? I said, what do you want to say?
Right.
And we put it out there.
Yes. And watching you make those choices and empowered and entitled, I think, my generation to make our own choices, some of which may have been very different from your choices.
I'm
but
sure
I
they
think
were.
there was a technique that we observed in choosing to embody our voices and make choices in how we did so.
Embody our voices.
Embody our voices and make choices in how we do so. So grasping African dance, for instance, and training in African dance and seeing it as the seat of our technique.
Now, how would that change from Percival Board teaching me in the 1970s? You know, Percival Board, this handsome Trinidadian husband of Pearl Primus, and every year would take a group of students to Ghana. And how was it different? Because African dance was the language of the Black liberation movement.
I think
Is that overstated? Do you think any Black folks in the room have a feeling about that? What was the dance language of the, are we talking civil rights struggle or the nationalist struggle? And how is it different?
the Black arts movement, I would say African dance and African American dance, but that's another conversation.
African American dance.
Yeah, African dance and African American dance,
Was
which
the
I think
language
were the languages, yes, of those struggles. But I think that what your work did was allow us to do. You were just with Mark Barmouthi out at Yuba Bueno.
Yes,
and
love
Mark Barmouthi says this interesting thing about we have come to a point now where without flinching, we can put a hip hop body, hip hop vernacular on stage and call that contemporary dance and call that modern dance. It no longer needs to sit in a space where we call it the dance of the Black liberation movement. It can just be the movement that's on stage in the contemporary moment. And I think that there was something about the choices that you were making that showed us the technique of how to get there ideologically. And then when you did Fela,
That's a big jump.
That was a very interesting moment. Is it a big jump?
Oh, please.
I think
a lifetime happened between those two things. You understand, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. And it's interesting you should say that, because what I thought, where that was coming from, was yes, there is the Black voice that gets up and testifies to the community. But you realize most people around me were white people. I thought it was coming from be as crazy as you like and flip the script. Artists, the best artists in the modernist tradition is what I thought it was, were the ones who were always faster than the critics, always actually leading the audience, and hell-bent on they're informed by a certain type of alienation. I thought that alienation was the thing that united arts people. So I'm glad that it was speaking to you about race, but I was talking to you as a rebellious young woman. Don't let anybody tell you what you should or should not be doing. And if you want to be a classical ballerina, you can still be a down sister and be a classical ballerina.
Indeed.
You know, but that was also where it was coming from. Look at who my company was. You know, look at what people were doing. Yeah, and that last scene, remember, there was, 52 handsome nudes. Everyone thought it was going to be homoerotic. That never occurred to us. We always thought that it should look like the world. Larry Goldhuber, 300-pound Jewish boy from New Jersey, right? Arthur Aviles, 5'4", Puerto Rican. I say white Puerto Rican, you know? Sean Kern, champion Irish dancer from Belmont, Massachusetts. Betsy McCracken, this long, tall, ballet-trained white woman from Austin, Texas. Greg Hubbard, looks like a basketball player. But it was really, we were a motley crew and proud of it. This was the counterculture speaking. That's where I got the freedom to do it. Mr. Ailey, I loved, but I didn't think that Mr. Ailey and I understood. When you work with Ailey at first, I was told, men have to look like men on Ailey's stage. Very important. And a lot of guys were gay. But that was kind of, I understood it. You know, we just got up here now. They just were letting us into these halls. We got to act, we got to act right. Act right.
Right.
Right? And we got to have the right bodies. We got to have the right technique. Yeah. but what are you guys doing? Damn, man, you're rolling around on the floor, you know? You're acting like those white kids. They have the freedom to do that. That's not what you should be doing. And you know, what is black dance? You know? Black dance was, for many years, I thought black dance was anything on stage where black people talk about what Thelma Golden calls the trauma narrative of slavery. That made black dance. I don't know if people got so intense talking about it. It was very difficult to understand what people meant. And I said, black dance was anything a person who calls himself black chooses to call dance. Now, how's that working these days?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
I think it's time to talk to the audience. I could answer that.
Oh, you should. I mean, I've been talking a mile a minute here. Tell me, you're the emissary from this generation.
I'm Onye.
Ah.
I'm Onye. I would say that I think that there is a vernacular anthropologically. I think that there are vernaculars that we can trace that came from Africa. In you know, history, human history is expansive, but I think that we can trace certain things in the body, certain vernaculars that came from Africa. I understand what you're talking about in terms of black concert dance, but I think in my generation, Brenda Dixon gave us this word Africanist, and I think that there's some structures to Africanist, polyrhythm, polycentric, the juxtaposition of coolness and heat and intensity. There are certain ways to identify the vernacular in a similar way that you would identify somebody speaking English versus somebody speaking Japanese in the body. That was what was interesting to me. That was why I made the leap to talk about Fela and the choice that you made there in terms of the body which body vernaculars you were working with.
Well,
but I
do you want to talk about Fela? Please finish.
But I do think that what you were originally saying, which was to Mr. Ailey, like, you know, I can be raucous if I want, right?
Irreverent.
I can be irreverent.
I don't always have to
uphold
hold the race.
Yeah, yeah. I think that for us, that well, for me, for Onye, I think that I was able to say I can choose to focus on African dance. I can choose not to do a tendu, and still call myself a concert dancer, and have my technique be based in Africanist form, and I can analyze that dance. I can analyze that dance from a technical and anatomical perspective if I want to, and articulate that. And as Bamuthi said, without flinching, call it contemporary. And that was my own version of raucous.
Transgressive.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
yes.
As raucous is, you know, getting drunk and having a little fun on Friday night, or there's a lifestyle. I will transgress in who I love, how I live, how I behave, how I wear my hair, you know, what my politics are, you know. James Brown was a transgressive dude.
Indeed.
Troublesome dude, right? And, you know, this Africanist, and Brenda Dixon and I, we have a relationship as well. But I'm wondering now if you had said to Miles, or Max Roach, or Bird, or Louis Armstrong, or Ella Fitzgerald, or Billie Holiday, or Dizzy Gillespie, some of them traveled more, but you know, what's your connection to Africa? I don't know if they would have been able to answer that, because they had an idea that was rooted in something. Yeah, there was the black church, the black experience in America. And then they had this notion of sophistication. And when they looked at sophistication, why are those jazz men, and Mark, and Jamil Kosovo, I love that about these young dudes, why did they dress as if their tailor was the Prince of Wales tailor? What is that? Why did they behave this way? Now, did they go through a period where they wore dashikis and all? I guess I know the art ensemble of Chicago were very Africanist. But those people I'm talking about, which probably had a lot of influence on my idea of style and meaning, we weren't, and I fear, my greatest fear is that we sentimentalize Africa with that. If you hear Maya Angelou talk about living in Ghana in the, I don't know, was it 60s or 70s, and how African people there made it very clear that you thought you were coming home, but we see an American.
Right.
You know? So the Africanist thing, if it could work for you, and as an art, and as saying contemporary dance, that's great. But I want to know how you're pushing the form.
Yeah, we're pushing. Yeah, definitely pushing past sentimentality.
No.
Yeah, we're
Hip-hop,
training now.
Hip-hop. Can hip-hop really join the stakes of innovation, as we've seen? Well, what did Mr. Ailey do? What is Elio Primari doing? What was Martha Graham doing? What was Merce Cunningham doing? Thinking about the Western dance tradition as a point of focus and then questioning it. And I think if that's what you mean about hip-hop, if that's what you mean about African dance, then I'd say, good, show me your geniuses.
We got them, but we got to let the audience ask some questions now. So I think we have some runners with microphones. Take some moment to do some Q&A.
I have seen Spring Awakening, and it's one of my favorite musicals, and I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about that experience.
What would you like me to say about it?
Just
Now, from what point of view?
as a choreographer?
Well, Michael Mayer, wonderful director, called me up, and he said that he had seen up in Harlem something I'd done called the Table Project, in which we took 6 little girls, and they came from a local dance school. I wanted little girls of color, although we did it in Boston with a mixed group, and in Harlem, for instance, and then we had them learn very simple ritualistic gestures on a ziggurat structure designed by my creative director, Bjorn Amelan, who's my companion, and done to a Schubert trio. Very beautiful, very simple movement. They did this whole little ritual. No, it was actually the other way around. There was a group of men of a certain age, my age. I was in my early 50s at the time. And guys were not dancers. You know, the people in the society who don't get looked at, the men. And we had thought across the social dial, would it be men of a certain age? Would it be women of a certain age? No, men and little girls. That's how I determined. So we made that piece, and it was the little girls were so charming, and the guys were kind of charming in their own way because how awkward they are. Somebody's a lawyer, somebody's a head of a corporation. And he saw that, and he said, that's the kind of choreography we need. I don't know what he was thinking about, because he showed me a guy on, at that time, it was called MySpace or something like that. A young dude, actually in his boxer shorts, in his bedroom, lip syncing and dancing. And he said, see, that's going to be a major conceit in Spring Awakening. Young folks in 1893 are going to behave like young folks in 2000, whenever that piece was done, 2003 or 4. And he said, I want them to feel as if when they pull out their microphones, they should be contemporary kids singing about their angst in the way he is. So I was invited into that. The show was already 6 years old. They'd been working it. Duncan Sheik had already thrown out 21 songs. It was far along, and Michael made me look really good, because he said, this is where your number will be. My number? The world that I come from, we don't do numbers, right? You know what? We do numbers now. Now I know what that form is like. And yeah, he set me up to look really good. Here's your number, it's 2 minutes long. Here's another number you're going to do. And that's how I came into it. And looking for something that captured the spirit of what kids feel like in their bodies. Yeah. Yes.
Hi. I just want to say I'm really happy to be here today. My name is Jessica. I have grown up in this neighborhood, and I wanted to kind of go back to something that you were talking about earlier, about the trauma narrative of slavery within dance, but I wanted to break it out into, I think, art forms in general, so I'm talking about literature and writing as well.
And the trauma narrative? Or?
Yes, because I do believe, and I want to kind of bring the elephant in the room into the room, so to speak, and say that we are actually standing in what could be considered a war zone here on the south side of Chicago, and there's a trauma narrative that's going on here right now for many young people and old people and people in between. And I think there's art that's being created out of that traumatic experience, and out of that community level trauma that is then derided within the academy as being offensive, negative, ludicrous, unwelcome within a certain discourse.
Okay, now hold on. Okay, this is, okay, that we're in a war zone, I understand. What is the academy? And what are the examples of the work that is outraging the academy?
Okay, so I would be referring to what is, kind of referred to as the drill scene, which is music coming out of, the south and west sides of Chicago, which is being created by 19, 18, 17-year-old young black men, young black male bodies are being kind of put on a national and international screen. So when I say the academy, I don't mean to be facetious. I'm just saying people in academic contexts. Or even in an interpersonal context, but I'm wondering, how do we bring these trauma narratives that are...
I mean, there were so many assumptions in what you say that we should dig down in that.
Okay,
because I'm not sure if I know what you're talking about. Artists are always criticized by some establishment.
Right.
But this one you say has a particular cast to the criticism that has to do with the race of these young men and their location.
Yes.
What is the work they're doing?
It is music. It is, rap music. I'm
Have you
trying to
seen
bring...
the cover of Vanity Fair?
Yes.
Jay-Z is on the cover of Vanity
Yes.
Fair.
But
Okay, so when we talk about rap music, what are you talking about? I hear there's underground rap. Because rap is now the thing which I understand. I understand more white kids from the suburbs buy rap music than, that is that's what makes people rich. So what do you mean by rap music?
I'm referring to it as a canon outside of, I think, what you have termed as the Western, or what is generally perceived as being art.
Is it really still outside?
Well, no, and I think you made that argument saying by who are the primary consumers of rap music, but I do think that we need to problematize that consumption and say that it is being consumed by a much larger audience. So I agree with what you're saying, but I guess what I'm getting at is how can we dig into this as a canon, into rap music as a canon, and I do welcome your pushback on that, and see the art that is being created outside of that cast of derision.
So tell me, because I'm very basic, when a young choreographer comes from the hood, makes a work, that work is not reviewed by the press?
It is, but I believe that there is a general attitude that is taken when those art forms are being critiqued it's pejorative, it's somehow dismissive, yes,
it's somehow
I do believe that there is a general pejorative tone that is taken toward art forms such as drill, such as trap music, and it's a southern heritage of music that is, that has followed the path of, the Great Migration, and so I'm just wondering.
See, I'm sorry, but I can't feel it right now because I feel like the audience that I would like to have trusts much more. I mean, particularly if you're talking about black folks, which is to get black folks to come and see what I do. I don't know if they're really interested in my references. I've talked about my mother, I've talked about those things, but I'm still trying to figure out something about the 20th century and how there was this collision between all sorts of strands. And I don't feel, I'm not preoccupied with the same thing the young hip hoppers are preoccupied. Look at my age, and I don't know what their stance is in relationship. The reality of it, our president says about the guys, well, when he first was running, about the guys with the low-hanging pants, and he was saying, there are ladies in here, man, pull your pants up. Now, is he just uncool he's Uncle Tom Cabin? What is it? Or is he already speaking a language that is it an assimilationist language, or he's speaking another language? Therefore, is he negated in terms of understanding the young? I want to see the choreography. I want to see the choreography. I want to see how articulate it is. I want to see truly how honest it is, and how they, because a lot of those forms, they could be very easily become stylish. You know what I'm getting at? Do you know who Little Buck is? You all know,
Yes.
what Jukin is, right? Little Buck is now like the toast of, he's a brilliant dancer, but it's a type of the next generation or two generations after what we called breakdancing. And it's the most elegant, tops of the feet, very, very lyrical, very acrobat, like voguing. It's taken voguing to another step. Right now, he's been discovered by Alistair Macaulay of the New York Times. And now he's cool, right? And he's on gala benefits and fancy places and all. Oh, we very easily, those young guys right now, do they feel that just a trick of the dial, enough articles, and they could be on David Letterman or Jimmy Fallon, or they could be doing that, and then they will be in the deal. Do they have the stuff that artists have about, the hell you say, I will always go the way away from what you think I should be doing? And I am curious, voraciously interested in how I can push the envelope forward, rather than become a mogul. That's what my disappointment in hip hop was. I have great respect for Jay-Z. I'm not a businessman, man. I'm a businessman, right? I mean, where are they at? And I want to see the work before we start saying that they're being dissed and not respected. Because it's my way of looking. Everybody right now, you go online, you get that viral video, you get a couple of million hits, somebody's going to be knocking on your door offering you a contract. And the young know that better than I do. So, do you want to push back? Am I sounding like an old fart here? What is that? Yeah.
Can I?
Yeah.
Because I
What is
think
that?
that we have a dancer by the name of King Charles and a group by the name of the Footwork Kings that are coming out of Chicago right now.
Right.
And they're bringing out a dance style that is incredibly percussive and characterized by footwork that is blisteringly fast. And that form is coming out of communities that are, as she says, at war right now, where young people are shooting each other on the streets. And I think, I don't live in those communities myself, but I think that many of those artists or dancers, when asked what are you going away from, it's not necessarily what people think they ought to do. They're trying to get away from the violence. And the actual movement itself is a technology to do that, to refine their ability to exist inside of such a chaotic environment and to empower that.
Sounds brilliant.
Yeah.
That's great. We've always produced geniuses. We, and I speak we as the lower classes, if we want to use high and low, have always. And then it gets absorbed into the popular culture and somebody makes $1 million. A few of the smart ones, like Jay-Z, right? They rise to the top and they're also making $1 million. So it becomes a class issue. So are you saying this sounds like something that I want to go see it? Like I tell you, Little Buck, you people knew what juking was, dancing on the tops of your feet like that. Then it was discovered by, I think the Aspen Institute, he did a benefit or something, and it went viral. I mean, where are they? Are they not getting their due? Are they not getting grant money from the Illinois Arts Council? What's the complaint? And I know that they live in those neighborhoods. Do they want to stay in that neighborhood? Do they want to get their act together and be able to train others? What do they want to do with what they're doing? What do they want to do? Are they not being heard? I mean, because I want to know what the complaint is.
Well, thank you. I don't want to speak for anyone.
Are they here today?
That's a good question.
Uh-huh.
That
And that's
is
whose
the problem.
Whose problem? Okay, here it is. What did they call me? The most significant choreographer, some bullshit like that, right? Right, like that. Yeah. Here at the Humanities Festival, featured talker, right? Are they interested about the history of the forum? This guy's a Kennedy Center honoree. Why do you think he is? Probably because of what you said about Uncle Tom's Cabin. That's not what they thought in the downtown world. I didn't deserve to be there because you brought race into it. Now you're considered a leader. Quite frankly, it is. I am a leader. Look, right? Why are they not here?
I mean, I could say excessive.
I'm just speaking rhetorically, ma'am. But yeah, I'm sorry. Please. You don't have to answer it. I'm not expecting you to answer. I'm looking over there because you were the one that spoke, right? I mean, come on, folks. What's going on now? She brought an elephant into the room, or a gorilla, or whatever it was, right? Is it stomping around? Is it hurting our discourse? Yes.
The elephant in the room, or the idea of the availability that there are children who are unable, they're not accessing the same kind of tradition. They're not participating. I don't know who she's talking about directly. Unfortunately, I don't know this dance, but I love your point about wanting to see it. And hopefully there's a journalist in the room who will say that. If not, somebody can tell a journalist. 'Cause
And
it's a
please
great-
say from the stage, Bill T. Jones says, I'm disappointed that you were not in the room.
I'll write the dance
So
journalist
that
myself.
he said that from the stage. I don't even know who you are, right? I have a date with an important artist in this community, and I hope that he will take me by the hand and show me these guys, right? Because I think he's a person that does that, so that he knows about this, right? But tell them I missed them being here today. We need their voice here today. Yes, ma'am.
We have one right here. I just want to mention that a year ago, at the Chicago Humanities Festival, the Footwork Kings were presented on the stage. So they were here. They had the audience. It was the first time I had seen them, and the drill teams were also there. Blew my mind.
Yeah.
Just blew my mind. But it was part of a bigger scene. It was part of the history of dance, is what they were. And they were the highlights. So they started with, they had tap and ballet and the Latin dances and swing. And they were the highlight, and I think they reached so many people that would be very interested in cultivating what they're doing. I think it just is a matter of who are they and how do they ask the right people for that help.
Yeah, who's managing them?
Right.
Who is advising them?
And
Who
we
is
have a
it-
question here.
Yes.
Hey, Bill, it's the Aster.
Hey, how you doing,
I'll
sir?
take you around.
Yeah.
I'll take you around.
Yeah.
So part of what I think Sister's getting at is it has something to do with this idea of a conduit.
Do we have
that-
more light? Do we have more light?
Oh, I ain't that handsome, but whatever you need. I think that bodies are responding to trauma by creating dance, but there are no venues, Bill. There are no venues, and so that dance plays out on the street. We reclaim that space, but then that might get shut down by the cops because maybe while we're juking, we're also selling weed. That those things live really closely to each other, both as forms of survival. And so for a moment, I thought, wow, we are so middle class now that in a way we've become separated from this thing, and then in this way, the climbing of a ladder that gets you to the point where you can be seen, that you would even know to make a YouTube video. For some, is still kind of a challenge. And so, so part of it is how do we create the conduit from the very low bottom? I mean, what she's talking about are folk who really, are at the very low bottom. And then how do you get the very low bottom in a place where the black sophisticated folk in the room are like, oh, he's twerking. How automatic of him. You know what I mean? That it almost has to come through a certain kind of critic before black people will love it and celebrate it. If we see those thugs on outside our houses, we're gonna be like, man, you need to move with that old crazy music. And so some of it is about creating the conduit, and then some of it is about creating the platforms through love and resource that allows a brother to juke when he wants to juke, or a sister you know, and so maybe if I would love to hear you talk about conduits between the high art and the very low bottom of Black American culture. A little bit.
And I will say it is the same as it was when,
Amen.
what was it? Was it in this town or was it someplace else? You know, scat music was invented. Supposedly Louis Armstrong was singing a song and he dropped the sheet music and then started singing, "Ba-da-ba-doo-ba-da-ba-dum," right? He invented it right there, and we know the history of scat, right? Okay, and how did he do it? Did he have his white, liberal, local critic write that he is a genius, right? Well, America's made of that. You know, these guys, it's a hard way to go. It's a hard way to go. I have a place called New York Live Arts right now, right? And we have a Fresh Tracks. Fresh Tracks will come in and audition from I want more diversity, right? How do I get them to come and audition for Fresh Tracks? How do I get them? You know, that's a white place. That's where white people go. I don't know what is not a white theater, you know, in a way, you know. It's a theater tradition that it's hard for us to do in our communities. I'm asking more questions. I guess I'm trying to speak to them as badasses. You're talking to a badass. I come from a family of potato pickers, right? On welfare. I go to university, the first one, maybe not my older brother, yes. The first one, you're gonna get to university and you're gonna do what? Modern dance. Man, you better be getting a degree to do law or something like that. You owe it to your people, you owe it to your mother and father. But no, I had been infected with the notion that this is the counterculture. I can do what I want to do. And he said, free at last, free at last. Oh, I'm free. I should be able to do what I want to. Are they really? And believe me, I have nephews who are probably the age of these dudes, and talented and beautiful, right? And I'm saying, you know, how are you organizing your time, brother? You know, the world is your oyster. You got to go down to New York Live Arts and audition. Are you looking in the papers? You're looking for management. I dare you, with your stuff, is you as bad as they tell me? You go to the lead agent down here downtown with a videotape. You go to them, and you throw down a really tight show, right? If it's as hot as it sounds like it is, you know, they will know it, and they will be all over it. You know that, right? Do they know how to take care of business? Now, here's how I'm going to beat them up, you know? But I know these people, they are my relatives, right? I have spent $21,000 on a young man who will remain unnamed. I got him out of jail earlier this year to the tune of $9,000, right? I have actually introduced him to friends. I have taken him to performances, right? And I agree, he doesn't, well, you know, there's all white people there, Uncle Bill. Okay, so what could I do? I've tried to take my arms around him and say, you know, they want to kill you. I know that, brother. But your Uncle Bill is here, right? I'm going to do what middle-class people do for their kids. Ain't working yet. Ain't working. Maya Angelou told me, look, Bill, you think his life is better because you've been giving him $30,000 over 2 years? Well, no. She said, well, why are you still doing this? There are people programmed set up to do that, she said. You know, okay, now that's personal. If these guys are hot, do they know how to find an agent? What did they do with this event that happened here last year that they're still talking about now? Do you know how to work it? That's the American way, right? That's the American way. Like it or not.
So, Bill, I'll just say one more thing because
Please.
What you're also pointing to is the lack of kind of entrepreneurial ecology that could support creative activity. That is, if the only agency is downtown, and it's an agency that is a modeling agency that might take one Black girl, you know, then part of the problem is shame on us for not having more agencies that could do the amplifying work while brother does his business, man. You know.
Am I hearing Marcus Garvey come into the room suddenly? This is an old discussion, you know.
But I do think that there's room there's room for more amplifiers. There's room for more than just one agent in a city like Chicago. And I think that part of the challenge is that the agencies that exist maybe aren't necessarily listening for all of the cultural talent that exists.
I understand.
And so whether it's
And they have a tin ear, a blind ear around certain things, right?
very possible.
Hey, look, I'm trying to make a go of it on Broadway. Do you know how difficult it is on Broadway? If you get a show up there, never mind The Color Purple, that made back its money in 6 months. Spring Awakening closed after 2 years, you know, right? I don't know if Spring Awakening ever made back its money. Spring Awakening needed a group of investors. Some people can do it with 3 people, 3 big rich people. They needed over 19 or something to get it done because it was so radical, right? So it's hard for everybody. Now try to get a show that has a black theme, black leads, and actually, because, you know, they do want shows. They want stories, you know. What is a story? Remember Bring in the Noise, Bring in the Funk? It did pretty well, but why isn't it still playing? Wasn't it as good as Les Mis or any of those? Why isn't it still playing, right? So we need more amplifiers. You're right. So I've had, I didn't do it. We chased after Jay-Z and Will Smith for years to get them. They finally did. They put in a little money into Fela. How much promotion did they do for it? Because they're watching to see the thing makes money. And if it's not making money, we're going to distance ourselves. Was it a mission to make sure there are more black people coming to Broadway shows in their part? No, not really. They're a businessman, right? Now, am I different? See, because I have no claim to any pieties around this question. I have been a self-involved son of a bitch, right? I have been. Trying to be out of that and trying to love my nephew, trying to love the people close to me. But the art world, to be Martin Luther King out there, I don't know how you're doing. But I'm sort of excited that we're going to meet each other. But it makes you look inward, the bottom line, right? So yeah, we need more. Anybody in this room who's a platform maker? Who makes platforms for underserved or, yeah? And she's telling us we got to wrap it up, right?
Yes, she is.
Yeah.
Yes, she is.
Yeah. But no, this is a very important question because he threw down a challenge to your community, right?
How about the arts incubator on the other side of the park?
The arts incubator on the other side of the park.
So like you said, we need more. We need more. Let's have more conversation. Let's thank Bill T. Jones for being here.